Did you know that your blood sugar is always on the move? It's either going up or down. And I'm going to tell you why type 1 diabetes is one of the most, if not the most difficult diseases to manage. Did you know that there are 42 factors that affect your blood sugar, not just carbohydrates and insulin? 42 factors, and I'm going to talk about some of these. If you do not have type 1 diabetes, you don't even notice any of this because your body does a very, very good job at just keeping your blood sugar relatively stable all day long without you having to think about it. But if you have type 1 diabetes, you have to do the job of those islet cells of your pancreas that are not functioning. And it is so incredibly difficult to manage the blood sugar because of all these factors that are affecting your blood sugar. So let's talk about some of them. All right, let's talk about some of these. Of course, the quantity and type of carbohydrate that you eat is at the very top of the list because that's going to hit your blood sugar the hardest. There are different types of carbohydrates, and not all of them have the same effect on your blood sugar. So imagine dosing for these carbohydrates with insulin as a type 1 diabetic. Not all carbs are equal. So you're starting to see why this disease is so hard to manage. And then protein and fat. Those are huge because protein is actually converted into carbohydrates at the 2 to 3 hour mark after you eat them. Your liver breaks down the amino acids of protein and builds them back up through gluconeogenesis. And out of nowhere, you can get this spike in your blood sugar because of protein. And then fat is about the 4 to 6 hour mark. The same thing can happen with fat. Basically, the more cheese on your pizza, the more insidious and high this fat spike is going to be. With alcohol, there is generally a rise in blood sugar at first, but over the long term, you will see a drop in your blood sugar because the liver is prioritizing the metabolism of the alcohol over glucose production. And as I mentioned with fat and protein, the liver is responsible for chopping up all the fat and protein and building new carbohydrates that your body needs. And it's not going to be doing that very much when you're drinking alcohol because it's busy metabolizing the alcohol. The effects of drinking alcohol in your blood sugar can last for several hours even after your last drink. If you are dehydrated, then your blood sugar is going to be high. That's why type 1 diabetics are told when their sugar is really high to just chug a whole bunch of water because it helps dilute that sugar and can get their blood sugar down quicker. Steroid administration can cause a spike in your blood sugar as well. And everybody responds a little bit differently to steroids. As an anesthesia provider, I can tell you that sometimes I don't see much of an effect, and sometimes you see a big effect. Exercise is kind of a tricky category to talk about. Look at all the ups and down arrows all over here. If the exercise is light, then you're generally going to lower your blood sugar. That's why a lot of type 1 diabetics will go for a walk after they've had a high carb meal because it'll just help burn up some of that glucose. It'll help the insulin work more effectively, and their blood sugar won't spike quite as high after these meals if they might have underdosed a little bit with the insulin. Once you cross into that moderate to high intensity of exercise, then you start activating other things in your body like epinephrine, and once those things are activated, you can see actually a spike in your blood sugar when you're doing exercise. But everybody's body responds differently to exercise. You just have to know how your body responds as a type 1 diabetic. In general, anything that stresses your body out is going to raise your blood sugar. That's just a good rule of thumb to always keep in mind. So insufficient sleep, stress, illness, those things are all going to raise your blood sugar because your body is stressed out. You're activating the release of epinephrine, norepinephrine. Your body is dumping all sorts of things into the blood to keep your blood sugar up during a stressful time. With a low blood sugar, your body really goes into hyperdrive trying to keep your blood sugar high. The problem is your alpha cells that are supposed to be dumping glucagon into the bloodstream to release sugar, they do not work properly in type 1 diabetes, so you don't actually get saved by them. But your body is dumping epinephrine, norepinephrine, cortisol, growth hormone, everything that it can, it's dumping into the blood to try to keep your blood sugar up. And that's why a lot of type 1 diabetics will have this ginormous spike in blood sugar after they've had a low, because it's your body's kind of late response to this low blood sugar. And with these spikes, it's like flicking water on a fire trying to put it out with insulin. They're very hard to dose for. Dawn phenomenon is where your blood sugar starts rising in the early morning hours in preparation to your day beginning. Your body is giving you a little extra sugar because it knows it's about to wake up soon. And a lot of type 1 diabetics need to dose for that accordingly with their insulin pumps and with their shots. Allergies and puberty are huge as well. Those will cause your blood sugar to spike very high. And with our child, we find that we usually have to raise her basal rate double, sometimes more than double, to handle the allergy season once it rolls around. And then we're not quite to the puberty yet, but it's the same thing with puberty and those hormones. A sunburn will stress your body out and cause your blood sugar to spike. Altitude will cause your blood sugar to spike because your body is stressed out. It's not receiving as much oxygen. It can have a tremendous effect on people when they travel, and just a 2,000-3,000 feet of difference can make a big difference on your blood sugar. The last one I want to mention is the temperature of the insulin itself. Once insulin reaches 86 degrees Fahrenheit, it starts to break down and it becomes less effective. That doesn't mean it becomes 100% effective at 86 degrees, but that's the point at which the proteins in the insulin can start to denature and break down. And you might notice that your insulin is less effective if you keep it above 86 degrees for a prolonged period of time. So this was a quick crash course on why type 1 diabetes is one of the hardest, if not the hardest, diseases to manage. I wish it was just as simple as carbs and insulin, but as you can see, it is insanely complicated. And if you know anybody with type 1 diabetes, I hope you have the utmost respect for how horribly difficult this disease is to manage. Make sure you give them a hug next time you see them and let them know that you understand it a little bit better now.